ਕਨੈਕਟ FM ਤੇ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਸੁਣ ਰਹੇ ਹੋ ਸਵੇਰ ਵਾਲਾ ਸ਼ੋਅ ਤੇ ਇਸ ਵੇਲੇ ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਸਾਡੇ ਨਾਲ ਸ਼ਾਮਲ ਹੋ ਰਹੇ ਹਨ ਸਾਡੇ ਫੈਡਰਲ ਮਿਨਿਸਟਰ ਆਫ ਇੰਪਲੋਇਮੈਂਟ, ਵਰਕਫੋਰਸ ਡਿਵੈਲਪਮੈਂਟ ਐਂਡ ਡਿਸੇਬਿਲਿਟੀ ਇਨਕਲੂਜਨ ਕਾਰਲਾ ਕੁਆਲਟਰੋ, ਜਿਹੜੇ ਕਿ ਡੈਲਟਾ ਤੋਂ ਮੈਂਬਰ ਆਫ ਪਾਰਲੀਮੈਂਟ ਹਨ। ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦਾ ਸਵਾਗਤ ਕਰਦੇ ਹਾਂ। ਮਿਨਿਸਟਰ, ਵੈਰੀ ਗੁੱਡ ਮਾਰਨਿੰਗ ਟੂ ਯੂ।
Good morning.
So, I would like to start with the We Charity situation, because that's been the story which has dominated the news cycle for the major part of the last 2-3 weeks. What was your involvement with the We Charity file for the Canada Student Service Grant?
Really important question, thank you. So I was the minister that announced the $9 billion package of student measures that we put out, and I think we actually talked to you guys about it. But specifically, my responsibilities as a minister were around the youth employment piece of it and the Canada Student Loan and Canada Student Grant piece. The Student Service Grant, which was the piece that was the big discussion that you just mentioned over the past couple of weeks, was the responsibility of my colleague, the Minister of Diversity and Inclusion and Youth, because she's responsible for youth volunteer initiatives in the Canada Service Corps. So, like the Prime Minister, I didn't know the details of this program until it came, well, in my case, the Cabinet Committee 2 days before on May 6th, and then ultimately it was discussed at Cabinet on May 22nd. So I wasn't involved in the program design. I wasn't involved in determining who would be recommended to Cabinet, for example, to deliver it for us. But I was definitely involved in the conversations at Cabinet about it.
And so the first presentation to the Cabinet was done on May 8th, or was it May 22nd?
Yeah, so the first presentation was done to a Cabinet committee, the COVID committee, which I'm on May 6th, I believe. It might have been May 5th, but May 5th or 6th. It was supposed to then go to Cabinet on May 8th. It didn't. The Prime Minister pulled it because he wanted more due diligence. When he was briefed before Cabinet, that was when he found out about we being the recommended organization, and he actually pulled it from the Cabinet agenda. And then we took 2 more weeks, and then it actually came to Cabinet on May 22nd.
So do we know what happened between May 8th and May 22nd? Because that seems to be one big question, that the Prime Minister on May 8th wanted the public service to do more due diligence on the matter. And what was it between May 8th and May 22nd which was shared with the Prime Minister or the Cabinet which made him comfortable enough to proceed ahead with, or to give a green light to We Charity, being the organization administering the program?
Well, as you can appreciate, I can't talk about what we discussed at Cabinet, but what I can say is what the Prime Minister testified was he really wanted to ensure that this was the organization that was the best positioned or even uniquely positioned to deliver this. And I think that's something I wish people would have more information on, is what we were actually asking this organization to do. It wasn't like a website. I think there's this idea we were paying them a lot of money to put a website on that young people can apply to. Because of the lack of because nonprofits are so stretched right now, what they would have done for us had this gone through was so much more. So training young people, helping young people apply for the jobs, mentoring them, onboarding them, overseeing their volunteer positions, tracking their hours, paying them the grants. Really, because, I think of Delta, and I think of the Delta Food Bank, and if I said to Delta Food Bank, I have 3 young people who can volunteer full-time, they would find that difficult because, or any organization, I don't know if Delta, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because you have to train people, you have to oversee them. They're already stretched. So we wanted an organization to support young people in getting these opportunities and doing them well. It was really a hands-on experience we were asking we to provide.
What do you think could have been done differently, the way things have unfolded with this We situation?
I think that's such a good question, and I thought so much about that. And of course, looking back, the obvious thing would have been for the Prime Minister to recuse himself, and he has apologized that he didn't. I have said, others have said it would have been a lot cleaner had he done that. We don't know what decision we would have made. I don't think I would have changed my mind, but we'll never know what the conversation would have been. I do believe the public service did what was asked of them. I think they dug in, they looked at the organization, they looked at the timelines, because it wasn't like we said to them, can you deliver something in 6 months? You know, the same people, they're the same people who are doing CERB and the student benefit and the seniors benefit. You know, there's only so much capacity for them to be able to do their work. And they're also working from home and taking care of their kids and living through COVID like the rest of us. So, you know, looking back, the biggest thing, of course, would have been for the Prime Minister to recuse himself, the Finance Minister as well. But they didn't. And we're here. And I think, you know, major lesson learned. We also have to remember where we were. This was crazy times, right? This was weeks after the CERB. We were drafting legislation on the student benefit. People were dying. We were sending the military into our long-term care facilities. It was so much going on, and I'm not saying that as an excuse. I'm just reminding people of the context. Really, absolutely, we dropped the ball on this. But there's so many other good things that we did. And even in the students piece, there's still $8 billion worth of good being done. The student benefit is helping close to 1 million students. People are getting a break on their student loans. We created 110,000 jobs for young people. There's, you know, I would love that we were talking about that right now.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, but I mean, this issue monopolized everything over the last 2 to 3 weeks. I do want to switch gears and talk about some of the other things as well, which do fall under the purview of your ministry.
Yep.
The CERB is coming to an end, but the Prime Minister announced that it will be transitioned to EI. Can you tell us a bit more about how that's going to work, or are those details still being worked on?
Well, we're going to be announcing further details early to late next week. But, you know, what we announced last Friday, the Prime Minister, and then I echoed it, was we know the CERB has served us well, but we need to get Canadians back into EI as quickly and as seamlessly as possible, and as many people as possible. You know, EI is a better system. And, you know, there's a working well on claim option. There's training opportunities. There's a real-time tracking of hours and income. It's a system, right? It's not, it's able to help people more. But what we also know is a lot of people don't have enough hours to get into EI because they were not working because of COVID. So we're putting in place flexibilities to get as many people as possible into the EI system. Now, we're talking about around 4 million people that will be going off CERB at the end of August. So, you know, we don't know how many people between now and then maybe will go back to work or find a job, but let's say it's 4 million. Many of those people are eligible for EI. They can go into EI without any changes to the system. A lot more could go in if we were, you know, were more flexible in our requirements and didn't make them so difficult. But you're still going to have people like self-employed people, like gig workers, who don't pay into EI, who never got EI, but who do get the CERB. And for those people, we're going to create a parallel benefit like CERB, but that's going to have a lot more features of EI. So the working well on claim piece, or access to training. Because now we've had 4 months to design this, we know where the gaps are in CERB, we know where the cliffs are, but the Prime Minister in particular is extremely committed to not dropping anybody. So if, you know, we're going to make sure that if you still have to care, you can't work because you've got care responsibilities and your kids can't go to school, you'll be covered. We're making good on our promise to have a 2-week, you know, COVID sickness benefit. We'll give you the details of that next week. So we've really dug in. I can tell you that as much as all the other craziness has been going on, we have taken the time to get the EI system ready, to get as many people into it as possible, and to create support for people who still won't be in that system. And
Minister Qualtrough, would there also be some measures in place to make sure that nobody gains access to that EI fraudulently, like was the case with CERB?
Right. Yes, absolutely. And that's one of the, thank you for mentioning that. That's one of the benefits of EI is we can look at records of employment, for example. We can follow up people in real time. We can check to see what people's income is. So thank you, a super important part because that system is in place in EI. And so while it's not perfect, it's a heck of a lot better than the CERB in terms of our being able to immediately detect if people aren't telling the truth.
Last week, another funding was announced, close to $59 million to help temporary foreign workers and improve living conditions on the farms for temporary foreign workers. Can you tell us a bit more about that, please?
Yeah, absolutely. So again, we announced another $59 million, focusing on inspections, beefing up our tip line for people to call in different languages, funding of migrant workers organizations, and probably most impactful in the long term, investing in creating housing guidelines and changing the program so that we will require certain levels of housing for temporary foreign workers, particularly on farms.
Minister, every time you're on air, it's so easy to get talking about all the points which are of national importance, which are, of course, really relevant given your ministry. But you're also the member representing Delta, and always what tends to happen is we run out of time to talk about what's happening in the riding that you represent. A lot of the good stuff is happening in Delta as well, especially with the track, the funding for which was announced about 3 weeks ago.
I'm so excited about this. Honestly, it has been so many years that so many people have been working on it. I took up the charge when I ran the first time. I committed when I ran the second time. And it's finally, and I would say it's a really good example of, MLA Ravi Kalan and the Mayor George Harvey and I and all three of us really working together, putting pressure at different points in the government system. And we ended up getting almost $4 million for the North Delta track, which is huge. We needed a place for our young athletes to train and not have to leave to go to other places like Richmond or Surrey. We need a place for our seniors to gather and walk and be active and for kids to play. And this, will not only be a track, and it'll be a great track, a competitive, highly competitive track, but there'll be, infield and, outdoor courts and bleachers and lighting and washrooms, and it's just going to be a great community hub. And I'm super jazzed, partially because it took a lot of people and, community advocates and coaches and teams, and it feels like all these people came together because this was really important to our community, and now it's happened. So I'm thrilled. Thank you for asking about it.
I was thinking that every time you're on, we talk about all these issues which are important. Like CERB is important. The funding for the temporary foreign workers is important. The We Charity stuff is important. Employment is important. But what's also important is the riding that you represent, which is Delta, and whatever is happening there with the efforts of the different levels of government. That needs to be discussed as well.
Well, it really does. And again, like in other communities, through the pandemic, there's been some really significant investments, whether it's in women's shelters or housing or seniors programs or, all this has happened. But because the big news, to your point, is this crisis, sometimes people don't get to hear the good news about what's happening next door, what's happening in their local charity. The Delta Foundation is distributing millions of dollars of federal money to local organizations. And you're right. It's really lovely to remind ourselves there's so much good work and it's being supported at home, next door, across the street. And it's an important reminder. And thank you for asking me about it. I love talking about Delta, so I appreciate you asking me.
Thank you for your time this morning, Minister. That's all the time we have. But once the details of the new programs are rolled out, especially with the EI benefit and the other stuff that's coming down the pipeline, we'd love to speak to you again in the future.
I'll make it a priority for sure.
Thank you so much.
Okay, take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.